Hello Fluffy Tails, I'm the serious Squirrel and welcome to the Arkham Asylum character bio special that I promised you. Before we start blabbering too much, we will start right in and begin with the first one, Batman. When his parents were gunned down in front of him, young Bruce Wayne resolved to rid Gotham City of the criminal element that took their lives. He trained extensively to achieve mental and physical perfection, in addition to mastering martial arts, detective techniques, and criminal psychology. Dressing as a bat to prey on criminals' fears, Batman fights crime with the aid of specialized gadgets and vehicles, operating out of his secret Batcave below Wayne Manor. Next up, the Joker. An insanely homicidal supervillain, the Joker's white skin, green hair, and blood-red lips belie the chaotic nature underlying his cartoonish appearance. The self-styled clown prince of crime has no superpowers beyond the capacity for incredible violence and his skill at creating deadly mayhem. He frequently concocts elaborate schemes to entrap his arch-nemesis, Batman. Next up, Warden Sharpe. Quincy Sharpe has been running Arkham Asylum for the past 3 years and has dedicated his life to restoring to sanity the so-called supervillains that plague Gotham City. He's currently campaigning to become the next mayor of Gotham. To facilitate this campaign, he has instigated stringent new security and experimental research policies at Arkham. Next up, Frank Bowles. Frank has been working at Arkham for 8 years. He has twice been suspended for drinking on the job and regularly holding poker evenings in the guards room. Frank is desperate to be the top dog at Arkham. He fails to recognize that he is considered untrustworthy and generally disliked. Next up, Killer Croc. Born with a rare mutation that made his skin green and scaly and grew his body to grotesque proportions, Waylon Jones was raised by an alcoholic aunt and bullied relentlessly for his appearance. He briefly worked as a carnival freak under the name Killer Croc, but his misanthropy grew, as did his bestial nature, pushing him to a life of crime. As his physical condition and mental state deteriorate, Killer Croc becomes a more bestial foe, increasingly detached from humanity. Next up, Harley Quinn. An Arkham Asylum psychiatrist assigned to treat the Joker, Dr. Harleen Quinzel instead became obsessively fixated on her patient, believing herself to be in love with him. She helped him escape confinement and took on her own criminal identity as Harley Quinn. Quinn is a violent and unpredictable felon whose only motivation beyond general mayhem is achieving the Joker's approval. Because of his cruel and mercurial nature, this in some ways makes her just another of his victims, albeit a very dangerous one. Next up, the Penguin. The Penguin, one of Batman's oldest foes, is an eccentric criminal mastermind known as much for his love of ornithology and trick umbrellas as for his shady business dealings. Gotham's popular Iceberg Lounge serves as Cobblepot's front for a number of illegal financial activities that fund much of the city's underworld. Despite his short stature, the Penguin is a wily foe whose umbrellas conceal a variety of deadly weapons and gadgets. Next up, Two-Face. District Attorney Harvey Dent was one of Batman's strongest allies in Gotham City, until a criminal threw acid in Dent's face, hideously scarring him. The wounds fractured his psyche, and he was reborn as shit-sweet criminal mastermind obsessed with duality. His former good luck charm, a two-headed trick silver dollar, was damaged on one side in the attack, and Dent has seized on it as a reflection of his half-scarred visage. He flips it to decide the fates of his victims. Despite Batman's efforts to reform his former ally, Dent is consumed by his fixation on chance, and his crimes are designed to prove out his diametric philosophy. Next up, the Great White Shark. The crooked financier who stole millions of dollars, Warren White thought he'd scored a legal victory when his insanity plea went through. But when he got to Arkham Asylum, he realized his mistake. Driven insane by the other inmates, he was also disfigured by an encounter with Mr. Freeze that left him without hair, nose, ears or lips. Calling himself the Great White Shark, he filed his teeth into fangs to more perfectly resemble his new namesake. Putting his financial skills to use, he has become a major player in Gotham's underground crime scene, running a number of rackets from his cell in Arkham. Next up, the ventriloquist. Arnold Wesker was a timid orphan whose deep repression erupted in a barroom brawl, resulting in him being sent to Blackgate prison. There, he encountered the puppet Scarface and promptly murdered the man who'd carved the puppet. The two are now inseparable, with Scarface directing a series of criminal activities. While most believe that Wesker is simply acting out a second personality through the puppet, Wesker sees himself as a reluctant lackey who merely does his puppet's bidding. Next up, Black Mask. Following the suspicious death of his multi-millionaire parents in a fire, Roman Sionis inherited their fortune and then went on to bankrupt the company. Saved by a buyout by Bruce Wayne, Sionis came to resent and hate Wayne. Fixated on the concept of masks, Sionis carved one from his father's black coffin and sought revenge. His ensuing battle with the Dark Knight caused his mask to be burned into his skin, remaking him as the Black Mask. Sionis is now a feared gang leader and one of the most powerful mob bosses in Gotham, with a burning hatred of the Batman. Next up, Calendar Man. Fixated on the calendar, Julian Day became Calendar Man, a villain who timed and tied his crimes thematically to certain holidays throughout the year, often leaving clues by which he could be caught. Gotham City's hopes for a day off are often clouded by the knowledge that any holiday of note is likely to be shadowed by Calendar Man's presence. With the first row completed, this concludes the first part of reading the character bios. I hope you enjoyed this little interlude, Fluffy Tales, and come back in the next one, where I will see you soon.